name's Lynette Charters and I'm painting the Missing Women series, and it's all about how women are presented but not represented in museums and our higher end galleries. A woman's image is generally seen from the point of view of a heterosexual male, otherwise known as the male gaze, but rarely from her own position. Translating a woman's image to speak to her life and her value can be tricky. Given the issue is about how women are underrepresented, I found the best way to present a woman from her own perspective was to leave her out of the picture altogether. Being an artist, my chosen context was museums or high-end galleries, but the series also speaks to how women are less presented in society in general. Art history is saturated with images of women, but women's genius and value as artists has been edited out of history. I started to render images of famous paintings, but instead of painting the women in the images, I left an empty space, leaving the wooden board showing through. I wanted to avoid them being interpreted as simply objects in their absent state, so in every painting there is at least one eyeball staring back at you. They observe you as you observe them, inviting you into their void world. Being unclothed, there are many women painted in history in compromised positions. There are also many paintings of women as odalisques or in harems. Exhibitions are devoted to the subject of the nude or the odalisque in history. In showing these paintings, museums should speak to gender inequity. History needs to be presented from everyone's point of view. This is the Guerrilla Girls poster referencing Ingres's Grand Odalisque, with the clever use of digital collage to challenge the viewer. Here is Émile Bernard's Three Races. Three Graces is a subject popular in fine art history, and one wonders if that's what he was referencing in this painting of harem women. I rendered this painting in the series because the women depicted in the original are definitely not enjoying themselves. It leads one to wonder if the painter noticed. People at the time were not educated to see things from a woman's point of view, but we are more educated now. It is right to applaud the mastery of these paintings, but I wanted to give the women a voice from the grave, so to speak. This is my rendition of Manet's Olympia, recently renamed Law, after the model who is portrayed as the servant. Manet contrasted his painting with the image of women the public was used to, which was Titian's Venus of Urbino. But Manet painted a reclining Victorine Meurent, who exhibited her work at the prestigious Paris Salon. At the time, she was a more successful painter than he was. We are seeing her staring directly at you on her own terms. She may be unclothed, but she is identifiable and unashamed. It's said that Manet painted Paris society with all its imperfections, and Paris didn't like it. The painting is ahead of its time in terms of feminism. I made my version not in judgment of Manet, but to include the painting into the debate. Lucian Freud's first wife was Kitty Godley. They had 2 children, but she left Freud after he fell in love with someone else. She was the daughter of Jacob Epstein. She was a painter herself and studied at Central School of Art in London, but was famous for being the model of her father and her husband. Women exist in living memory, but because their achievements are not documented, only the images of their bodies remain. Judith and the Head of Holofernes is a popular theme in fine art history. The evil woman theme is popular in music and drama throughout the ages. But women do not perpetrate the vast majority of violent crime. George Catlin was an American painter in the early 1800s, notable for being the first white man to paint Native Americans on their own territory. I painted this one in support of the organisation Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women, an organisation that seeks to highlight how little policing and media reporting is afforded the Native community when Native women go missing or are murdered. I'm told that Native women in Catlin's day were sent to white men to curry favour or abate cruelty. Although she is not naked, the lace draped low implies a story of her being either a man's aspiration or his conquest. De Kooning took a detour from his usual abstract expressionism with a small series of paintings called Woman. These paintings were very aggressive in style. They were unpopular at the time with feminists and art critics. De Kooning never really spoke about the suggested violent content, preferring to deflect any questions with talk of line quality and style. I find possible candidates in many places. This one was found looking through Browser's bookshop in Olympia. The description in the book suggested that this was Picasso's response to the idea of man as machine. This was amusing to me because the image is obviously not of a man. The description is an example of how women are absorbed into the man group. Yves Klein was famous for covering models in indigo paint and dragging them across a surface in public performances to make art. He used bodies as human paintbrushes. At the time, he claimed that they were not sexual. He was either being obtuse, or he was very naive in thinking that these would be seen as anything but sexual. He was trying to elevate his art, when ultimately he would certainly profit from women's naked bodies. I doubt if the women had thrown their painted selves across paper and called it art, they would have commanded the same price. Klein's original Petite Venus Bleu is a tiny 3D relief sculpture placed a little way ahead of a gold leaf background. In my version, I flattened the image and left a vacant blue space. Wyeth's sauna shows Siri Eriksson. She was a minor when he painted her. We don't know how old she was because of conflicting reports, but they know she was a child. Wyeth claimed to have a parent's permission, but any permission given by or on behalf of a child is compromised. As a minor, you're not aware of the full implications of what you're dealing with. I have variations from different cultures and different periods in time. The more variations I have, the stronger the statement. Some genres, of course, are much easier to find than others. We have made steps, but we have a long way to go. And without the support of documented history, we're on fragile ground. When I start a painting, I usually have around 6 to 8 candidates in mind, which I load up on a search engine on my phone. Then I look for the wood with the right markings geographically. Sometimes I already have the frame, in which case I will measure out the distance between wood knots to see if they are the right proportions. If I have more than one candidate, I pick the most interesting wood grain or the grain that suggests the appropriate expression on the face area of the missing woman. It's very hit and miss, and I have to be comfortable with a certain amount of chaos at this stage. When I have chosen the wood, I take it home and set about making it work with the image of the original painting. Some of them fall into place automatically, but with many others there is a lot of manipulation that has to be done to make it work. It's not important that I get an exact replica, more that I capture the spirit of the original. When I have mapped out the painting in light pencil to my satisfaction, I will lightly varnish the skin areas with acrylic medium. This protects the wood to a certain extent when I paint around it. I have to be very sure at this point that my drawing is correct. It's very difficult to change a line when it's under a layer of acrylic medium. When I paint, I try to respect the genius of the original artist. Often I find myself speeding up or slowing down, figuring out the tempo and movements of the artist. Paintings of left-handers are always more difficult for me to render, as I'm not left-handed. I make adjustments for the fact that I am painting on wood. They were more likely to have painted on something else. Colour and texture all have to be accommodated. Layers of paint are used for depth and colour adjustment. I like to celebrate the wood and allow its texture to show through the paint, but if it starts to distract attention from the image of the painting, then I use layers to conceal it to the point where it doesn't compete. The candy wrappers are significant of how women are given gifts. We rely on handouts quite often, and generally it's more expensive to exist in the world as a woman, and we don't get paid as much. And they're also in gently used second-hand frames. If we're contained and dressed in a certain way, a traditional way, then we're palatable and acceptable. Museums and history textbooks guide us in placing value by highlighting achievements. By and large, women show little presence in either. My hope is that within my lifetime, the reason why I created the Missing Women series will become a part of history.